Welcome to the Teach series. My name is Devon Godfrey, and I'm a programmer that stubbornly tried to be an artist for 10 years. For the past 5 or 6 years, I've been developing websites here in Genesee County, and I've built over 200 websites. Now, I'm going to share with you some of the secrets that I've learned building all those websites. You are also going to learn some of the deepest, darkest secrets of marketing. And I am also going to share with you how you can ethically use these secrets in your own business. Let's get started.
How exactly you got started in web design and development?
Oh, that's an interesting one. So how I actually originally got started into programming, which led to web design and development, was I worked for an electrical contractor for like 6 or 8 years, a long time. But I was so committed to game design that I started to learn programming and I started making games. And I made a couple of fun little side projects, and I had a website dedicated to them, but I've let that drop off. I was hired by by a local company as an in-house web developer, which was an amazing opportunity. And I was hired on as a 1099 employee, which I didn't know what that was at the time. This was like 5, 6 years ago. So they brought me on board, and for the first time in my life, I enjoyed going to work. That was awesome. But then fast forward a little bit, the guy who managed that business and who hired me, he tragically died of heart complications. And I was put into a position where either I could keep my job that I really enjoyed by making sure that this business continues, or I don't, and I'm going to have to risk going back to being miserable. Well, I was not going back to being miserable, I can tell you that. So I kept that business going for as long as I could. And then eventually we came to an understanding that, more family came in, of the guy who died, and they took over, and they were able to pick it up from, where I left off. I was able to keep things going long enough. And I learned so much about managing a business. Like 8 months of absolute hell, but the best business boot camp I've ever experienced. Eventually I broke off from them and formed my own web development business I called Play Free Technologies, which was just my game development branding was Play Free Games, Playfrey, but I just made Play Free Technologies as my web development work. And that's where I've been ever since, and it's been a really fun ride, and it's been amazing working with all the different people that I've worked with. But more than anything, though, it's been like I said, the relationships and learning how to be human. And where I've actually been really diving into this is there's another good book out there called Guns, Germs, and Steel, and it's all about the history of humanity. So let's assume that there's 2 basic modes of thinking for the human brain. There's the hunter-gatherer mode of thinking, and there's the farming society mode of thinking. The people who tend to become happy and do well are the people who adapt to have a hunter-gatherer mode of thinking in a farming society. Jordan Peterson actually put this really well, and that is, when someone is facing a tragedy or a disaster, you don't want to make the world smaller. You want to make the person bigger. When the world pushes on the hunter-gatherer, they push back. They become bigger and stronger people. While, in the farming communities, they don't want to make their workers too strong, so instead they tried to make the world a little bit easier for them by systematizing things. And you can't go too far on either side. I by no means have all the answers to all our economic problems. No one person has ever been able to figure that out. But definitely there is a balance to be struck there. It's been my observation that our general population is a little too far on the farming side, and a lot of people have benefited from coming just a little bit closer to the hunter-gathering side.
So jumping into web design and development, to someone who has no idea what that consists of, what does your week look like?
Oh goodness. So Mondays and Tuesdays are always dedicated to just my stuff. I'm working on Freydom Sites, FREYDOM Sites.com, which is a platform that I built where a small business owner can have a very respectable, very nice website for only 35 bucks a month, and all the technicalities are removed. You just tell your story, and a website is generated for you based on that. It's super simple, super easy. So I work on that, and I manage that business basically. And then I got about 20, 21, 22 like other clients that I manage, and I manage their projects from like Wednesday to Friday. And I'm, working on various tasks across all those projects. I do meetings. I'm also a member of a group called BNI in Quile, and I'm actually just about to take over a leadership role at my chapter. So I've been taking training and doing all that, but that's pretty much my week. Monday and Tuesday I work on my stuff, and then from Wednesday to Friday I'm helping other people be successful.
When you first meet a new client, what are some things you ask them to kind of figure out what they're looking for, and then how do you go about starting to build their site?
So the first step is a test for red flags. And question number one is, have you worked with a developer before? Yes or no? And if the answer is yes, I listen to their response. Like, okay, how was your experience with this developer? And if it's something like, oh, they sucked, it's like, oh, really? Why? And I'll let them tell their story. Did you work with a developer before them? Oh yeah, and and if they say they sucked even more, and that's an immediate red flag, because if they have like a streak of bad experiences with developers, there's only one common denominator there, and that's the client. And so that's the first question. The second question is, okay, am I right for them? And this may sound weird, but they have to convince me that I am the right person to support them in their projects. And I found that to be so freaking important, because I've taken on projects in desperation before, and they've blown up in my face. So I will not take on a project unless the client is able to convince me that I can, support them. If they're not sure, that's not a problem. I can help them clarify what they're looking for. But at the end of the day, if they can't convince me that a website is right for them, then I won't recommend that they build a website.
Essentially, when you're meeting a client for the first time, they're almost auditioning for your business.
Exactly, and I do it for both our sakes. Like, I just met with the prospect the other day, and they already have an existing website. In fact, I think for what they need, it's a perfect website. And I told them that, I'm like, look guys, your website's fine. There's not really a whole lot more I could possibly add to this. But then the core question really started to emerge. It was less about them having a nice website, and it was more about they wanted to be able to generate attention for themselves. And that's where marketing Devon started coming on now, which is from reading those Russell Brunson books, and that's the key word there, is attention.
Okay. What do you think is more important in a good website? The visual aspect of it, or the functionality and technicality of it?
It depends on the need of the client. They both go hand in hand.
Okay.
Because you can have, for a lack of better terms, a completely functionless page with minimal design, just words on a page. And that is sometimes more effective than the most complex, elaborate designs out there. It's less important that you get caught up in the design and functionality, and it's far more important that you understand what it is that you want to happen in the first place, and you just laser in on that.
Can you think of any examples of that in the real world?
So Linktree is a fine example of this. Their design, what design? It's just a couple of links on a page. Functionality, it's not complex. They just drop it in there, and yet these guys have managed to accumulate 5 million users, and people are actually using them as using Linktree for personal websites. And that's a fine example of, is very little design, very little functionality, and yet it's something that's undeniably effective for people.
Do you think a website is a tool, or more of a digital billboard?
A website is a tool that you use to convert attention into value. So on your typical small business business website that I built, I always put a mobile call button, because when someone sees your site and they're cool with what you got and they like your Kool-Aid, you want to make it as easy as possible for them to get in touch with you. So that attention is then converted to a phone call to your business, which then, depending on how your people respond, will turn into business for your business.
So aside from having, like you mentioned, that call button right on the website,
Mm-hmm.
what are some other features or buttons or things like that that can help convert that attention?
I've tried so many different ways, and of course it really depends on the business owner, because it's one thing to build the website with the perfect system, but it means nothing if the business owner cannot integrate with it.
So what has been your favorite site thus far to build?
Favorite site thus far to build? Ooh. Okay, that's a hard one. That's a really hard one, because I've worked on some really fun sites. Can we get a little bit more specific? Like, that'd be hard to get into without getting more detail. I'd have to say the most interesting site I've ever worked on was probably Social Beatz. I mentioned that one to you. We had to come up with some interesting solutions on how to get all that to work. So that was definitely one of the most fun sites I've ever worked on.
So with that, was it harder to build? Were there a lot of roadblocks or challenges or
There
anything? What made
was-
it fun?
There was definitely a lot of challenges, but I'd say what made it the most fun was I made a dear friend out of it. Like, and I knew the guy for, Sean, I mentioned him. I knew the guy for a couple of years leading up to it anyways, but, when we started working it together, probably the most fun thing about it was less about the website itself and more about the relationship Sean and I developed as we worked on the website.
It was really just a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
That was what was most enjoyable about it? Or?
And that's a key thing right there too, by the way, is I actually had an interview with GoDaddy a couple weeks ago. They were reaching out to all their power users, and I have a reseller. I use their reseller program, and I have a whole bunch of sites on their platform. And they reached out to me and wanted to interview me because they want some more ideas about their market. And one of their questions was, what do you say is the number one thing you need in order to make a sale? And I told them, without a doubt, trust. That's where a lot of developers fall short, is they don't focus on the relationship of the website. When you get into building a website, unless you're on Wix or Squarespace or something, and you know what you're doing, you're gonna end up needing the support of a developer. And a developer is a living, breathing human being, even though most of us try not to be. In order for that site to be healthy and properly supported, a strong relationship needs to be maintained. I've actually systematized in my business using a fun toy called Airtable. And I keep track of all my active clients. I follow up with everybody at least once a week. And I'm always checking in, seeing how things are going. And that's just so important. You gotta have that trust. And Sean is a fine example of a project where we developed a large amount of trust for each other.
With relationships, how do you go about gaining that trust from whoever you're working with? Like, what are some things you do to kind of make them trust you?
Well, number one, under promise, over deliver. Number two, tell the truth. Number three, and this may seem very contradictory, if I don't know something, I tell them I don't know.
So even if you don't have all the answers?
Even if I don't have all the answers.
Transparency is what it sounds like.
Yep. And the reason why is because, and this is where a lot of people get burned by developers, is you get a very proud developer who has all the answers. But then when it comes time for action, they just come up with excuses. And the truth of the matter is, everything that they said they knew, they just said, oh yeah, I know that, without actually knowing that. And that, a lot of people have been burned by that. So when a developer looks you in the eye and just says, I honestly don't know, but if it's really important that I do know, I say, well, I don't know, but I can go and I can figure it out. I'll keep you posted.
Yeah, and that goes back to updating them too.
Yep. And then, and fulfilling your promises.
Yeah. You said that one wasn't the most difficult site that you built, the Social Beatz one?
No, not by a long shot.
What was the most difficult? What gave you the most trouble
My
over
very,
your career?
my very first website. Did a project for a guy, and this guy was a very two-faced individual. And the website itself was a very fine website, and I had a lot of fun working on it. But this project put me straight down into hell. The problem was this is one, like I said, this is one of the most two-faced individuals I know. Like, to your face, he was very friendly, but then through email, he was like the meanest, nastiest, and through phone as well. He was one of the nastiest people I knew. And he hired me to build this very complex website for him. And I built it. It took me about a year. He paid me about $1,100 to build it. And it was supposed to be done in like 2 or 3 months. But he kept adding stuff, kept adding stuff, kept adding stuff, kept adding stuff. And, and at the time, I didn't have healthy aggression worked out yet. So I never really asked for, more money in order to cover all the extra stuff he kept adding. And I actually did the math on how much money I earned per hour based on the hours I spent on the project and the money I was paid. And I earned like a little over $1 an hour. It was pretty terrible. And the guy just made my life an absolute wreck. He was just, it was just a very stressful time. And it was one of those things though where it had nothing to do with the website, nothing to do with the technology, had everything to do with the relationship.
The relationships are really what it comes down to.
Yes.
If you could summarize the success or failure of someone's career in web design or development in one word.
Relationship. And that's with any career.
Awesome. So who do you look up to in your industry?
In my industry, well, Russell Brunson. I mentioned that to you. Guy has a lot of really sharp ideas on marketing. And I'd say that's the big one. Not really a whole lot to say about the man that I've already said in regards to marketing, and a lot of what I've talked about I've learned from his books.
Is there anything that we haven't quite talked about that you think is worth sharing?
Yeah, definitely. If you're a small business owner and you're wanting to start up a website, really the only question that you need to be asking is, because this odds are is that your real desire, and we talked a little bit about this, you want to create attention for yourself. And there's plenty of ways to create attention for yourself, even if you're the most meek person ever, I'm not going to say you have to be loud and proud, but there's definitely plenty of ways for you to go out there and do things. I mean, I'm a big fan of journaling and writing things out by hand, which may be weird coming from a technologist, but if you take some time and try to come up with a list of 10 ways that you can reach out to people and generate attention, and then just focus on practicing those ways, that's definitely it's at the very least a good starting point.
Awesome. What are some resources that people can use? Like anything that's available online, including your sites, of course. And then where can people find more information on you?
Oh boy, there's plenty of fun stuff. So if you want to see a company that has done the impossible, and that is building a database application easy and fun, Airtable.com is an amazing place. Like if you're a Excel spreadsheets nerd, I'd highly recommend playing around with Airtable because it offers a lot more than what Excel can offer, especially in terms of using it to build an application to manage your business. Another good resource is, FreydomSites.com, FREYDOM sites.com. If you need a really simple website, nothing too crazy, that's where you can get it. Alternatively, of course, you got Wix and Squarespace and other websites builders out there. but these people compete on complexity. Or correction, they compete on features, which increases the complexity of their product. And I've saved plenty of people from Wix because they've tried so hard to get a website started on Wix, and it just turns into an overcomplicated mess for them. Freydom Sites aims to not be that. Some other fun resources. Let's see. This one's a little technical, but Zapier.com. If you are the type of person that uses a lot of like web-based applications, so like say MailChimp, social media, Airtable, as a matter of fact, Zapier is a very fun little toy that allows you to get them talking to each other. So like as a fine example, I record all my time using an app on my phone called Toggle. When I hit stop, Zapier then takes that time entry and then drops it into Airtable, which I'm then able to relate to a job, which then it gets sent to my clients as a report. And that all gets done without me having to lift a finger. I've got like 80% of my business automated on Airtable.
It seems like it's almost like a behind the scenes like personal assistant.
That'd be a great way to describe it. And this personal assistant cost me about $25 a month.
You had mentioned like one of the biggest things that people are doing wrong with their websites is that they're just too complex, right?
Yes.
Do you want to elaborate a little bit more on that?
Oh yeah, like what typically gets very expensive about building a website with a developer. So you asked me earlier, what do you think is more important, design or functionality? So with a lot of the type of business owners I work with, you know, the reason why they're small is because they have to control everything. And when it comes to a website, they can't understand the functionality behind it. So they'll try to micromanage the one thing they can control, which is the look and design of the website. And a part of what I do in my, I guess for lack of better terms, coaching efforts with my clients is to get them to let go of that. Because when you're too rigid, and especially when you overcomplicate your website, a confused mind will always say no. So if you're trying to make some sort of offer for someone to call on your website, if you got like 80 links across your website, you know, that's, people don't know what the heck they want to do. So, you know, you want to make it so that there are as few options as possible. And I actually instill this onto my clients. So on a Freydom site, you can add up to 3 menu items to the menu to the site. And I strictly don't allow more than that. Because any more than that, then, you know, like click-through rate just plummets considerably. Yeah. And even that's a bit much, to be honest. But, you know, on like more complex websites, like clients want to add like drop downs and a whole bunch of links up top, and I'm like, no, 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 no. And, you know, there's been a couple of times where, you know, we butt heads pretty aggressively on it, and I'm like, you know, listen, you gotta understand, put too many options there, people aren't gonna know what the heck it is they even want. And if you ever heard of Pareto's principle, also known as the 80-20 rule, you know, 20% of your links is going to generate 80% of your clicks anyway. So you want to nail down what that 20% is and pretty much just only show those. And then your click-through rate skyrockets. Your website is, it's an edifier. It's something that tells people, that signals to people that you're serious. Because when you take the time to build and design a nice little website, you know, when people are looking for you and they find an actual website with an actual domain, you know, which it's getting easier and easier, but, you know, it still means something when, you know, you have your own site, your own hosted site.
When you build someone a site, do they have the ability to edit things themselves, or can they, or is that something you...
It'd be accurate to say that I can give them the ability, and I'm even willing to train them. More often than not, though, they'd rather not. So I build all my sites on WordPress, and I'm very proficient in WordPress. I write a lot of custom functionality for WordPress. And what I love about it is that it's the perfect middle ground for the user and the developer. Because on the one hand, myself as a developer, whatever custom functionality we need, I can either drop a plugin into it, or if I need to customize it, I can dive into the code and customize it. But it's a simple, I'm not going to say it's a simple interface, but it's a simple enough interface to where you can train a layman to hop in and manage it.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the goal with Freydom Sites, is to honestly take away the builder, as contradictory as that may sound, and just enter the data. And you know, and like I said, you know, I've got it positioned in the way where it's like you're telling your story, and as you tell your story, it just builds the site for you. And the whole goal is to keep you from doing exactly that. You know, instead of fidgeting with the design of your site, you just get the stuff on there and then continue on with your day.
So with that, have you found that when people build one of those sites, that like, has anybody come to you saying, "Oh wow, hey, I've got a lot of my time back"? But what's the response been to it?
It's been incredible. One of my really good clients, Michelle, she used to write code years ago, and so she understands technology, but now she's a yoga instructor, and she's gotten away from all that. Yeah. And she hasn't, I mean, she can do the technology, but she'd rather not.
Exactly.
And she was one of my early adopters of Freydom Sites, and she was just blown away by how simple it was and how much time it saved her, because you know, she was the type where, you know, if you gave her all the options, she would fidget with it all day long, because she's a tinkerer, plain simple, and you have to be a programmer. But when that possibility was taken away from her, it didn't lessen the experience. In fact, it significantly improved it, because you know, when she had some sort of new announcement to make, she would just go into Canva, make an image for the announcement, then hop onto their site, drop the image in, you know, tell the site where the link would go, and then she was done. It'd take her 15-20 minutes instead of, you know, while she's doing this 15-20 minute thing. Oh, well, let's change this. Oh, well, let's change this. And the next thing you know, 2 hours have gone by.
Yeah, and all of a sudden you end up with a whole rebranding, logo design.
Yep.
Completely different company, yeah.
Yep.
Anything else you want to share about you, like aside from web development and anything like that?
Well, check out my site, freydomsites.com, FREYDOMsites.com. You know, there's, you know, all my good things that, you know, I do and I've got going on there. And like I said, you know, that is an expression of solving the Genesee County website problem. And well, actually, I'll tell you what. You know, I'll create a coupon code, X Level Media. If someone goes to the site and enters that, they'll get, you know, say 20% off their subscription.
Awesome, yeah. Yeah, that would be super cool.
In fact, let me write this down so I'll remind myself to. I'm big on capturing tasks, but yeah, I'll create a coupon code for you, man. Well, I hope this has been really informative for you. I know I've had a lot of fun with this interview here with X Level Media. Now, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And also, as an additional bonus to you, when you go over to Freydom Sites, because you're an awesome subscriber and you're an awesome viewer and you definitely want to check that stuff out, if you use the coupon code XLevelMedia, you'll get 20% off your monthly subscription if this is something that works out for you. Otherwise, if you got any further questions, that's also where you can find me. Feel free to reach out if you have anything you want to ask. That's about it. Take care.